A $17,000 car isn't supposed to make Japan's biggest automakers nervous. Not in a country where trust takes decades to earn. Not in a market where local brands dominate nearly every street, parking lot, and dealership. And yet, when BYD revealed its new electric K car, people across the industry started paying attention. Because this wasn't just another electric vehicle entering Japan. It was a direct attempt to enter the one segment that has defined everyday transportation for millions of Japanese drivers. The question wasn't whether the car could be built. The question was whether Japanese buyers would ever accept it. For decades, Japan's K car market has belonged to companies like Suzuki, Honda, Nissan, Toyota, and Daihatsu. These brands didn't earn their position through flashy launches or aggressive marketing campaigns. They earned it through years of reliability, service, and familiarity. Many families have purchased vehicles from the same manufacturer generation after generation. In a market like that, even successful foreign automakers often struggle to gain meaningful traction. That's what makes BYD's move so unusual. Most companies entering Japan would start by targeting niche buyers or premium customers. BYD chose a completely different path. Instead of avoiding competition with established brands, it walked directly into the center of the battlefield. The company announced a compact electric K car designed specifically for Japanese regulations and daily driving habits. And from the very beginning, one number captured everyone's attention: its expected starting price. On paper, the figure looked surprisingly competitive, but the price alone wasn't the reason people started talking. What really caught attention was what BYD appeared to be doing behind the scenes. Because this wasn't a vehicle that had simply been designed in China and shipped overseas. The company had spent years studying the Japanese market before making this move. That detail may sound small. Later, it would become much more important. Before reaching this point, BYD had already been laying the groundwork. The company first introduced electric buses and commercial vehicles into Japan. Then came passenger cars. First the Atto 3, then the Dolphin, then the Seal sedan. Each launch expanded BYD's presence a little further. Each vehicle helped familiarize Japanese consumers with a brand that had once been almost completely unknown. But despite these efforts, Japan remained a difficult market. Unlike China or parts of Europe, electric vehicles had not experienced explosive adoption. Hybrid cars continued to dominate sales. For many consumers, hybrids already delivered excellent fuel efficiency and reliability. There was no urgent reason to switch. That created a challenge. If people weren't rushing toward electric vehicles, why would they suddenly consider an electric K car from a foreign manufacturer? The answer may have had less to do with the vehicle itself and more to do with how carefully it was designed. At first glance, the new K car looked simple, almost understated. There were no dramatic design elements or futuristic shapes demanding attention. Instead, the vehicle focused on practicality. Its compact footprint followed Japan's K car regulations. Its tall roof maximized interior space. Sliding doors made entry easier in tight parking spaces. Everything seemed designed around daily life rather than showroom excitement. And that's exactly what made industry observers pay closer attention. Because someone at BYD clearly understood something important about Japanese buyers. The company wasn't trying to change their habits, it was trying to fit into them. The implications of that strategy weren't immediately obvious, but they would become harder to ignore as more details emerged. Inside, the vehicle continued the same philosophy: practical controls, digital displays, modern connectivity, useful storage areas. Nothing revolutionary on its own, yet every feature seemed carefully selected to serve real-world needs rather than create marketing headlines. Then, attention shifted toward the specifications. And that's where the conversation started becoming more interesting. The vehicle was expected to use a relatively modest electric motor, not something designed for speed, not something intended to compete with performance cars. Its purpose was simple: efficient urban transportation. For many drivers, that would be enough. But the motor wasn't the real story. The battery was. And this is where things start to get uncomfortable for the competition. Because while most people focused on price, BYD had another advantage that wasn't immediately visible. The company wasn't simply assembling vehicles, it was producing many of the most important components itself. Batteries, motors, key technologies. That level of control allowed BYD to manage costs in ways many competitors couldn't easily match. At first, this seemed like a manufacturing detail. But later, it would begin influencing an entire business strategy. The battery itself was expected to deliver around 180 kilometers of range. For some markets, that number might seem unimpressive. But Japan's K cars serve a specific purpose. Most owners use them for commuting, shopping, school runs, and short city trips. Daily driving distances are often far below the vehicle's total range. In other words, the number that looked small on paper could be perfectly adequate in practice. That realization changed the discussion. Suddenly, people weren't asking whether the range was enough. They were asking whether buyers actually needed more. And if they didn't, another question appeared. What exactly were consumers paying extra for in competing models? That question led directly into comparisons with some of Japan's most established electric vehicles. The Nissan Sakura already enjoyed strong recognition. Mitsubishi offered a closely related alternative. Honda brought longer driving range to the table. Suzuki was preparing future electric offerings of its own. Each company had strengths. Each company had loyal customers. But for the first time, a foreign competitor appeared capable of offering a compelling balance between affordability, technology, and practicality. At least on paper. Reality, however, would be much more complicated, because buying a car involves more than specifications. It involves trust. Japanese consumers wanted answers to questions that spec sheets couldn't provide. What happens when the vehicle needs service? How available are replacement parts? Will resale values remain strong? Can the company provide long-term support? Those questions represented a much larger challenge than battery capacity or driving range. And BYD knew it. That's why the company wasn't focusing solely on selling vehicles. It was rapidly expanding dealerships and service centers across Japan. Every new location served a larger purpose. The goal wasn't simply making sales. The goal was convincing customers that BYD planned to stay. Because without that confidence, none of the other advantages would matter. Not the price, not the technology, not even the battery. And speaking of the battery, its significance became clearer the deeper people looked into BYD's strategy. The company had built much of its global growth around battery expertise. Its blade battery technology emphasized safety, longevity, and cost control. Unlike some competitors, BYD controlled major portions of its supply chain internally. That meant the company wasn't just competing as a car manufacturer. It was competing as a technology company that happened to build cars. And that distinction could become increasingly important. Because if BYD succeeded in Japan, the impact wouldn't be limited to one model. It could influence pricing strategies, product development decisions, future electric vehicle launches, even customer expectations. The entire competitive landscape could gradually shift, not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily. Which brings us back to the question that has followed this story from the beginning. Can a foreign company truly challenge decades of loyalty in one of the world's most brand-conscious automotive markets? Today, the answer remains uncertain. BYD's sales are still tiny compared to Japan's automotive giants. Toyota, Honda, Nissan, and Suzuki continue to dominate the roads. Their reputations were built over generations, not product cycles. Yet something has clearly changed. A company that was once barely noticed is now being discussed alongside some of the most respected automotive brands in the world. And perhaps that's the most interesting part of this entire story. Maybe the real battle isn't about who sells the most cars this year. Maybe it's about who shapes what buyers expect from the next generation of affordable electric vehicles. Because if a $17,000 K-car can force some of the world's strongest automakers to pay attention, then the most important question isn't whether BYD can win. It's whether the definition of competition in Japan is already starting to change.